In 2019, over 4,500 protests were held around the world, one every 2 minutes. But how many of these protests actually led to change? Surprisingly, only 30% of them did. Why does that happen? What makes some protests fizzle out, while others ignite real progress? We often hear about large-scale movements making waves, but the journey from protest to real change is much more complicated than just marching in the streets. From the power of social media to global solidarity, today's activists are rewriting the playbook on how to make noise and demand action. In this video, we'll dive into the secrets behind successful movements, how they start, how they grow, and how they turn collective anger into lasting policy change. Whether you're passionate about politics or just curious about how movements evolve, you'll want to stick around for the surprising strategies that shape the future. Chapter 1: The Spark of Change. From dissatisfaction to demand, the power of collective action often starts with a single spark. It can be a small incident that lights the fire for widespread change. Think about the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, sparked by Rosa Parks. Her refusal to give up her seat wasn't the first injustice, but it became the rallying point for a movement. This is how collective action works. It grows out of frustration, a feeling that things shouldn't be this way anymore. In most cases, the early stages of a protest are filled with anger and confusion. People are upset, but they often don't know how to channel their emotions. It's only when the idea of collective action takes root that something powerful begins to form. One study showed that over 80% of social movements start as reactions to political or social injustice. The key moment is when these frustrations turn into demands. The power of numbers can't be overstated. A small group of motivated individuals can inspire others to join the cause. Look at the Arab Spring protests in 2011. What began as a single man's act of self-immolation in Tunisia sparked mass protests across the Arab world. Social media allowed the anger to spread, and what seemed like an isolated event became a global movement. But why do some protests gain momentum while others fizzle out? It's about building connections. When people feel connected to a cause, they feel empowered to act. The best leaders know how to make others believe in the power of their collective voice. Activist and author Angela Davis said, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept." That's the mindset that turns a single protester into the start of a revolution. Understanding what drives people to act is key. Research shows that people are more likely to protest when they feel a shared sense of injustice. But the real power of collective action comes when those feelings are channeled into a clear, united demand for change. Without that clarity, momentum fades, and the cause loses strength. Chapter 2: Power in Numbers. The hidden strength of grassroots movements. The true strength of any political movement lies in the grassroots. These movements may start small, but they often grow into something far more powerful than anyone could have predicted. The civil rights movement is a prime example. While Martin Luther King Jr. is often the face of the movement, it was the countless unsung heroes in communities across the South who helped make change possible. The power of grassroots action lies in its ability to mobilize people from the bottom up. A report from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that grassroots movements are more likely to lead to long-term policy change compared to top-down efforts. This is because grassroots movements are deeply connected to the communities they represent. They don't just speak for people, they speak with them. In the early stages of a grassroots movement, it's crucial to build trust within the community. Organizers need to show that the movement isn't just about grand speeches or lofty ideals, it's about real, tangible change. For example, the #MeToo movement wasn't built overnight. It was built through personal stories, shared experiences, and the courage of individuals to speak out. What started as one woman's story turned into a global demand for justice. Grassroots movements are not just about raising voices, they're about creating a network of support that can challenge the status quo. The more people who join in, the harder it becomes to ignore their demands. In fact, studies show that a movement becomes more effective when it can organize a broad coalition across different groups. When people from different walks of life come together for a common cause, it strengthens the movement's impact. While large organizations often dominate the headlines, grassroots movements operate in the shadows, doing the hard work of building relationships, creating shared understanding, and ensuring that everyone's voice is heard. These movements show that change doesn't need to come from the top, it can come from the people, from the ground up. Chapter 3: Beyond the Street. Turning protest into policy. It's easy to get caught up in the energy of a protest. The chants, the signs, the sense of unity, there's something electrifying about standing together in solidarity. But the real challenge lies in turning that energy into lasting change. Protests alone don't change policies, it's the hard work that happens behind the scenes that pushes governments to act. Protests often capture public attention, but they need to do more than that. They need to create pressure. One of the most powerful ways to turn a protest into policy change is by building relationships with policymakers. Lobbying is a key part of this process. According to a 2018 study by the Center for Responsive Politics, lobbying spending in the US exceeded $3 billion annually. This shows that even in a system dominated by money, grassroots lobbying can influence political decisions. But lobbying is only effective if it is backed by a well-organized movement. Public pressure is crucial. Consider the 2018 March for Our Lives, a student-led protest calling for gun control after the Parkland shooting. While the march itself didn't immediately lead to new laws, it gave students a platform to demand action. Soon after, many states passed stricter gun control laws, and the issue remained in the national conversation. This is why it's essential for activists to think strategically. The next step after a protest is to get involved in the policymaking process. This can mean contacting representatives, organizing petitions, or even running for office. One of the most famous quotes from Labor leader Cesar Chavez is, "We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our communities." This mindset is crucial when turning collective action into policy change. Successful movements often have a clear strategy for the next phase. That could be organizing sit-ins, conducting marches, or putting pressure on elected officials. One unique tactic used by the Women's March in 2017 was its ability to reach across ideological divides. The event united people from different backgrounds, from liberals to conservatives, with a common goal: equality. In the end, turning protest into progress requires patience and persistence. Change doesn't happen overnight, and the road to policy reform can be long. But when the voices of many are united, those in power have no choice but to listen. And that's how a protest becomes more than just a moment, it becomes a movement that shapes the future. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. More insight into how collective action drives change is coming up next. Chapter 4: Digital Protests: How the Internet Rewrites the Rules of Engagement. The digital age has changed the way we organize, protest, and connect. In the past, movements relied on physical spaces to gather, but today, much of the activism happens online. Digital platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram allow ideas to spread faster than ever. In fact, research shows that nearly 70% of millennials get their news from social media, which is a powerful tool for spreading awareness and organizing protests. Social media has given rise to a new kind of protest, one that can take place without ever leaving the house. Hashtags like #BlackLivesMatter and #MeToo are prime examples of how digital campaigns can go viral and generate global movements. These hashtags have not only raised awareness but have also pushed for real-world change, from police reforms to more inclusive work environments. One advantage of digital activism is its ability to reach a global audience. In 2019, climate change activist Greta Thunberg's social media post sparked a worldwide youth movement that led to the global climate strikes. Thunberg's social media presence turned a single teenager's protest into a global call for climate action, showing just how powerful digital tools can be in connecting people worldwide. However, while digital activism offers a broad reach, it also comes with challenges. For one, online protests can sometimes lack the physical presence that gives traditional protests their power. In 2011, the Arab Spring showed how social media could spark revolutions, but it also revealed that online protests could be easily manipulated by governments or outside forces. The challenge, then, is to combine the strength of digital tools with the impact of physical action. The future of digital activism lies in its ability to create lasting, real-world changes. Social media can amplify voices, but it's the offline work that makes the difference. Organizing petitions, holding protests, and meeting with policymakers are all essential steps in turning digital activism into meaningful progress. Online movements may grab headlines, but true progress happens when online energy is channeled into action. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're finding these strategies useful. We're just getting started. Chapter 5: The Ripple Effect: Activism's Unseen Influence on Global Movements. Activism doesn't just change local communities, it has the power to ripple across the globe. One protest in one city can inspire movements in faraway countries, proving that social struggles are universal. The power of global solidarity is clear when you look at movements like #MeToo or Black Lives Matter, which began in the United States but quickly spread worldwide. The 2011 Occupy Wall Street movement is a great example. While it initially aimed to address economic inequality in New York City, it soon spread to other parts of the US and even globally. By the time the movement gained traction, activists were occupying public spaces in places like London, Madrid, and Hong Kong. The message of economic injustice resonated beyond national borders, proving that collective action doesn't have to be confined to one region. Global movements are often born from local struggles, but they thrive on international solidarity. The global anti-apartheid movement is another example. What started as local protests in South Africa grew into a worldwide boycott against the apartheid regime. This unity between activists across continents played a crucial role in bringing down apartheid in the 1990s. What's unique about global activism today is the speed at which it spreads. In 2020, the global protests for racial justice following the death of George Floyd proved just how quickly a cause can gain international momentum. According to a study by The Washington Post, protests supporting Black Lives Matter took place in over 60 countries. The ability for a cause to connect people across the world shows how collective action has transcended national borders. International movements often use the strength of local struggles to push for systemic change. As the world becomes more connected, it's easier for activists to collaborate across borders. This global solidarity is one of the most powerful aspects of modern activism. It proves that change doesn't have to be isolated. When people unite for a common cause, the impact is felt everywhere. Chapter 6: The Road to Progress. Holding power accountable after the protest. While protests are the spark for change, the real work begins after the headlines fade. After the energy of a protest dies down, movements need to stay focused on achieving lasting progress. Holding those in power accountable is a long-term commitment. This is where the strategy of sustained activism comes into play. One of the key ways to hold power accountable is by continuing to apply pressure. In 2018, the #MeToo movement achieved significant progress not just through protests, but by holding individuals and institutions responsible. Laws were changed, companies were forced to re-evaluate their policies, and many high-profile figures were held accountable for their actions. This kind of long-term pressure is what turns a movement from a protest into an enduring force for change. Another strategy is organizing for political power. In the aftermath of protests, activists often turn their attention to the political system. In 2018, a record number of women ran for office in the United States, many inspired by the Women's March. These new voices in politics are a reminder that activism can lead to representation. Political change often happens when activists make the decision to enter the system and fight for their cause from the inside. For activists, it's not enough to just make noise. They must also make their cause impossible to ignore. One way to do this is through coalition building. By joining forces with other groups, activists can amplify their message and gain more influence. In 2020, environmental groups, labor unions, and social justice organizations all joined forces to call for a Green New Deal. This coalition strategy helped push climate change to the forefront of national debates. While protests often make an immediate impact, real change takes time. It's about building momentum, staying organized, and pushing for accountability over the long term. Holding power accountable isn't easy, but it's the key to turning progress from a moment into a movement. Without sustained effort, change remains fleeting. The work of activists continues long after the protests have ended, ensuring that progress is not just a flash in the pan. By following these strategies, we can learn how to make protest matter, how to turn collective action into real policy change, and how to create movements that last. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more insights into how change happens.